Hey guys, Doug May here with That Audio Guy. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Arpeggiator in Omnisphere. So what an Arpeggiator does, and the simplest way to say it, is it takes your sound and creates a rhythm with it. Once you've set the Arpeggiator up and you play notes on your keyboard, it's going to take that sound and move it through that rhythm that you've set up automatically. If you look here on the Arpeggiator window, you'll see that there's a grid, and the grid is made up of these blocks. We've got 32 of them. These blocks are mapped to this clock value right here. So if I'm on 1/16 like it is, what that means is that each one of these blocks is going to have 1/16 of a bar value, and that's mapped to the BPM of your DAW. So let's take this bass sound, for example, turn our Arpeggiator on, and then if we activate this first block and play a note on our keyboard, you're going to hear it playing in 16th notes. I'll show you. And what the Arpeggiator does is it loops through the cycle that you've set. What you can do to extend this cycle is use this bottom slider right here, and you'll see that now it's increasing the number of these blocks that are part of the Arpeggiator, and then we can activate even more of these blocks. So now take a listen. You can hear it moving through this cycle and playing on only the notes that I've activated. If I were to change this to 1/8 instead of 1/16, it's going to do the exact same thing, only at half the speed, because now it's playing in 8th notes instead of 16th notes. Let's go back to 1/16, and then what I can do is, you can see these bars right here above the blocks. You can actually drag these. What these represent is the velocity. So when the note hits that block, it's going to play that sound at a certain velocity. So if I turn these down, maybe I turn these ones down and play it, you'll hear what it's doing now. It's not playing all those notes at the same velocity. And what you can also do is, if you hold shift and then click on these bars and drag them to the side, you see that it's getting narrower. What that's doing is that's changing the length of the note. So when it hits that block, for example, this one right here is about half the size or a third of the size. When the Arpeggiator hits this block, it's going to play that note at a third of the length, and you might be able to hear it. Can you hear how it's playing that note shorter when it hits this block? Another thing you can do is tie two blocks together. Let me show you what I mean. So if we activate this block right here, then what we can do is, if you double click the block next to it, it's going to tie those two together. Now when it hits this block, it's going to hold that note out for the duration of 2 blocks. You can also make changes to the note value that you want the synth to play when it hits that block. So what you can do is, if you see this number right here, if you click on that, you can actually change the interval that you want that note to be played at. So if we change this to a third, this is what it'll sound like. So again, you change the velocity by dragging up and down. You change the length by holding shift and then dragging side to side. And then you can change the note value by clicking this right here. If you click this arrow right here, there's going to be a drop-down window, and this has all the presets that are included in Omnisphere, the Arpeggiator presets. So let's go ahead and just pick this default one. It sounds like this. And now what we'll do is we'll go through some of these parameters, and I'll show you what they're doing to the sound when you change them. If you have this 1 octave tab selected right here, it's going to play through the sound as you're playing it on your keyboard. It's not going to introduce anything new. If you add this 2nd octave, what it's going to do is it's going to alternate between the note you're playing and the note that's an octave above that. You can hear what it's doing. And then similarly, if you take this 3rd octave, it's going to do the same thing but over 3 octaves. 4th octave as well. This menu right here where it says mode, this has to do with what happens, what Omnisphere is going to do when you play more than one note on your keyboard. So if I were to play 3 notes, when I've got this as played selected, it's going to move through those notes through the Arpeggiator as I play them in the order that I played them. So if I played these 3 notes, it's just going to move through those 3 notes as I played them. If I change this to chord, what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to play chords, and it's going to play those chords through the Arpeggiator. Kind of messy. If I choose up, it's going to move through the notes in that chord up. And all of these are similar. You can play with these and you'll hear how it's moving through the notes that you're playing. This menu right here allows me to choose from 3 different triggering modes. If I'm in legato, what that means is as I play notes, they're going to move through the arpeggiator as long as I stay in legato. But once I stop and play a new note, it's going to restart that arpeggiator. It's going to start at the beginning again. If I'm in song position mode, what that means is the arpeggiator is just going to move through its cycle on its own, mapped to the BPM of my DAW. Regardless of how I'm playing, it's not going to restart if I don't play a note a certain way. If I'm in note mode, then it's going to restart the arpeggiator every single time I play a new note, even if I'm playing it in legato. Again, this clock allows me to change the note value that I want. Maybe I can try a 1/16 triplet. You can hear how that sounds. So like I said, it's mapped to the BPM of your DAW, but if you want, you can actually use this speed knob right here to manually change the speed. And that's not necessarily mapped to the BPM of your DAW. This length knob right here allows me to change the length of the entire arpeggiator. So before I showed you that you could hold shift and then go side to side. If you use this length knob, it lets you change all of them at the same time. The reason why this knob is cool is because you can actually assign it to a modulation source, and then the length of the arpeggiator notes are changing over time. So let's go ahead and modulate that with an LFO, for example. Maybe we'll turn the source up a little bit, turn the rate up a tiny bit, and you can actually see on the arpeggiator that the width of all these bars, they're moving now. So when we play, you can hear that it's moving through that length modulation. What this swing knob right here is allows us to make changes to the swing of the rhythm. You can hear what that's doing. This slider right here, this velocity slider, it allows us to have more control over this velocity right here. So you can see that these bars are all at different levels, and like I said, that represents the velocity, how hard that note's going to play. If we were to change this all the way to key, then what that means is this won't come into effect. Every single note's just going to take the value of the velocity that we play on our keyboard. So you can hear that. And then again, on the other side of the slider, if I change it all the way to the arpeggiator, what that means is it doesn't matter how hard I play on my keyboard, it's going to move through that arpeggiator with those velocities that I've set up. You can hear that. The best place probably to keep this is somewhere in between, because you want this velocity that you can set up to take effect, but you also want to have a little bit of control over it with the keyboard and how hard you're playing. And then if you look down here, there's this really cool feature that's called Groove Lock down here. This is a really cool feature that's new to Omnisphere. What you can do is you can take MIDI files from other projects, other songs, whatever, and you can drop them into here, and then it's going to take the rhythm of that MIDI file and it's going to try to match the arpeggiator to that rhythm. And then what you can do if you don't want that groove lock anymore is you just hit this clear button and it'll remove that MIDI file that you dropped onto there. So these are just the basics of the Arpeggiator in Omnisphere. I really love this tool. I think it's something that's really powerful and I use it all the time, especially with bass lines, things like that. So that finishes up all of these patch tabs right here. Make sure to stay tuned because in the next few videos we're going to start talking about the multi, how the patches are coming together to form the multi, and some of the cool features that are included with that. Hope to see you in the next video, my friends.